Well, good morning and welcome to the Resurrection Sunday version of the online class Solid Rock Sunday School class from First Baptist Church in Oxford, Alabama. I welcome you back after a 3-month absence. I hope there are still some people who are looking for this class and hope they find it today. God bless you. Thank you for joining me today. Welcome to my home. Welcome to the class. And let's get started. I've got a different kind of lesson I want to bring to you today. This lesson came from a devotional I saw by Sarah Lingle. I don't know her, but she made a beautiful devotion that related the Easter Resurrection Sunday scenario with all the way back 1,500 years before to the formation of the nation of Israel. So I want to relate those two today and then tie them all together with a passage from Hebrews. So welcome to the class, and let's get started right away. Let me ask you a question as we begin today. What are some life-altering words that you have heard spoken? Could be, well, I now pronounce you man and wife. Could be, congratulations, you've got a little baby girl or a little baby boy. It could be, your cancer is cured, or you have cancer. But the most life-altering words I've ever heard spoken, is what I read in the gospel accounts of Resurrection Sunday when it said, He is not here. The 3 most important words are, He is risen. What life-altering, life-changing words are those we see this morning, we talk about this morning. Let's look in John chapter 12. Now, each of the 4 Gospels gives an account of Resurrection Sunday, and the women come into the tomb very early in the morning to anoint Jesus' body with spices. But when they get to the tomb, they see the stone rolled away, and John's Gospel just focuses on Mary, but there were other women present, but focuses on Mary Magdalene going back to the disciples and telling them that the stone's been rolled away and Jesus' body is gone. Probably from when they looked at the stone rolled away, they could see in the tomb and there was no body. So she goes back and tells Peter and John, and those two run to the grave site, run to the tomb, and of course Peter, he arrives second, but he's the most impulsive, so he bursts on in, and he sees the grave clothes lying there. And then John, who had gotten there first, when he sees Peter go in, he goes in too, and the scripture says, and he believed. What a great moment when one of our brothers and sisters believes in the resurrection. We're going to see Mary Magdalene believe in the resurrection today, and all because of one thing, and I want you to focus on that as we look for just a little bit. I want you to look as we read John 20's passage out of John 20. What made the resurrection personal for Mary Magdalene? Let's look. We're in John chapter 20. It says in this gospel, like the others, that the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene went to the tomb early while it was still dark, and she saw the stone rolled away. So she goes and tells them, and so forth. So Peter and John run to it. But then when we get to verse 11, we read these words. But Mary Magdalene, stood outside by the tomb weeping. Now John and Peter go off. They're still contemplating and deciding and trying to put into terms what they've just witnessed. It said, but Mary stood outside by the tomb weeping. And as she wept, she stooped down and looked into the tomb. And she saw 2 angels in white sitting, one at the head and one at the feet. I'm going to give you some pictures today to try to describe that. Now, this is not a very good depiction of what I think the tomb looked like. Remember, it was hewn out of stone. I thought maybe it was sandstone and therefore easy to carve out. But best I can find out, it was limestone, so it was probably very hard stone. But Mary, as she was crying, as she was weeping, as her world had changed so dramatically, she stooped down and looked into the tomb through tear-stained eyes, and she sees two men sitting there. She saw two angels in white sitting, one at the head and the other at the feet, where the body of Jesus had lain. If you look, you can see a shelf or a platform where Jesus' body laid, and there you see the wings and the angels standing, one at the head and one at the feet. Now that's a very important depiction. That's a very important thing. Let's read Mary's response. And when she said to them, she saw them, she said to them, she thought maybe they did know where the body was. And they said, if they have taken my Lord, I do not know where they have laid him. That's why she's weeping. They asked her, why are you weeping? When she said this, she turned around and saw Jesus standing there, but she did not know that it was Jesus. And Jesus said, woman, why are you weeping? Who are you seeking? That's a great question. Who are you seeking today? Who am I seeking today? And she, supposing him to be the gardener, said to him, Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have laid him, and I will take him away. And then Jesus said to her, Mary. And she turned and she recognized him and she said, Teacher. What a great moment. And that was the moment, I believe, that Jesus made himself known to Mary. And when she heard him call her name, she understood. So what a great moment that was for her. All right, so we see that scene play out. And Mary becomes the first witness to the complete redemption of the world. What a great, great accomplishment that Jesus did for Mary to see. So we're seeing that, and we see that the gospel became personal for Mary when she heard her name. When did the gospel become personal to you? I hope it has. All right, so let's go a little further now. Let's back up 1,500 years from this time, and we see the nation of Israel leaving Egypt, and God up on the mountain, been to the mountain, comes back down and gives Moses, who had been up on the mountain, comes back down, and he gives some instructions that God gave to him. And he says to them, we're over in Exodus, going all the way back to the Old Testament. I want to relate to you today how the Old Testament and the New Testament are the same Bible. They are the same scripture. They're the same understanding of what we need to know. So in chapter 25, we see starting in verse 10, we see the formation of the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark of the Covenant was called the Ark of the Testimony. It was a big wooden box made of acacia wood, but covered, inlaid with gold inside and out. And it had a certain length. It was a cubit. It was measured in cubits. A cubit is the distance from your elbow to the tip of your longest finger. In most men, that's probably 18 to 22 inches. And a little short, stubby guy like I am, it's closer to 18 inches. So I kind of measured mine 20 inches or less. But it said this box, this ark, was 2.5 cubits long. That's about 50 to 55 inches, close to 5 feet. And it's also 1.5 cubits wide, which would have been maybe 33 inches wide and 33 inches high. Inlaid inside and outside with gold. But then on the top of it was something called the mercy seat. By the way, God said, I will give you some items to put in there inside the Ark of the Testimony. It would testify to God's love and care for his people. He would put a bowl of manna. He would put the tablets of stone where he wrote the 10 Commandments with his finger. And it would put Aaron's rod that budded. 3 pretty good instances of God's love and concern, only he could have done. But he also told him you can't look in and see it. But anyway, starting in verses 17, he tells us about the top, the mercy seat that would go over the top of this Ark of the Testimony, Ark of the Covenant. And he says, you shall make a mercy seat of pure gold, 2.5 cubits length, 1.5 cubits wide, so it would match perfectly with the Ark of the Covenant, the Ark of the Testimony. And you shall make 2 cherubim of gold. The cherubim was an angel. You shall make 2 cherubim of gold. Of hammered works you shall make them at the 2 ends of the mercy seat. Make 1 cherub at one end and the other cherub at the other end. You shall make the cherubim at the 2 ends of it of one piece with the mercy seat, and the cherubim shall stretch out their wings above, covering the mercy seat. Here's a depiction of the mercy seat. We don't see it any longer. It's no longer in existence that we can find. It was destroyed when the Babylonians came and overtook the nation of Judah. And they took all the items that were in their temple, including this precious testimony, Ark of the Testimony. And the cherubim shall stretch out their wings above, covering the mercy seat with their wings, and they shall face one another. The faces of the cherubim shall be toward the mercy seat, and you shall put the mercy seat on top of the ark. And in the ark you shall put the testimony that I will give you. And there, God said, I will meet with you. And there I will meet with you, and I will speak with you from above the mercy seat, and between the 2 cherubim, which are on the ark of the testimony, about everything which I will give you in commandment to the children of Israel. So God met them at the top of the mercy seat. He met them here. A very important and wealthy item of wealth that was given to the children of Israel as a testimony. Now let's look at the relationship between these two. Now God puts the items in there. They put the top on it, and no Israelite is allowed to look in. Now it was put in a very special place. It was put on the tabernacle. Now the tabernacle was a traveling temple that went with the children of Israel. This is a depiction of it that shows a fence around it. And it was portable, as was the tent of meeting, the tent where they met God, where Moses met God. And it would be portable whenever the pillar of cloud would take up and start moving, or the pillar of fire, the children of Israel would pack all this up, and the group that was in charge of the temple, their name escapes me. They would take up these items and take up the tent and fold it all, and had a certain way to carry it, and they would transport it from place to place. But in this ark, in this room, it's called the Holy Place and the Holy of Holies. This is a depiction of that here. You'll see so many things. First of all, you see the outside area, which was this area out here. You would see the laver, which was a big bowl they could bathe in. Not bathe, they couldn't bathe in it, but the sacrifices were. And then we see the altar of incense. That was here. And the altar of incense had a curtain at the end of it. And in that curtain was a 4-inch thick curtain that hung down. And inside of it, past this temple, was the Holy of Holies, a very sacred place. In fact, so sacred that no one got to go in there except for one day. On the day of Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, the high priest, after first making sacrifices for himself, he would go into that curtain and he would pray for the sins of the people, that they would be carried forward, not punished for another year until the next Yom Kippur. And that was so sacred, no one else could go in there, so that the attendants in the holy place would put a tassel with a bell at the bottom of it, so they could hear him moving around in there and know that he was still alive. And they would also put a rope tied to his ankle, so that if they couldn't hear him and couldn't get him to respond, they could pull him out without entering into the Holy of Holies. Only one priest, the high priest, one day a year could go into there and offer prayers for the sins of the people, that they would be forgiven and transported forward for 1 year. This was a great, great ceremony, and it took place every year on the day of Yom Kippur. If you made it to that year, you would get the high priest to go in, and he would make intercession for you, and you would be spared the punishment for your sins until the next year, when it had to be done over and over again. Every year, once a year, this was done for the people of Israel. So think about this connection between the Old Testament and the New Testament. How does it help to build our faith? To know that even in those days, 3,500 years ago now, I guess, Jesus, when he died, he was carrying forward a ceremony of a sacrifice. You know, God had the Israelites to offer sacrifices. It said that the troughs along the streets of Jerusalem would pour red with blood because of all the sacrifices made for the sins of the people. A little lamb, a baby goat, a calf, a perfect animal without blemish couldn't take the place of a man's sins, but it would be a shadow of that which was to come, which turned out to be Christ. So let me ask you, how do these connections between the Old Testament and New Testament help to build your faith? In a room no one could enter. All right, so we see that the mercy seat was inside the Holy of Holies. It was like this, and when the priest went in there, he would take blood from the sacrifice he had killed for the sins of the people, and he would sprinkle that on the mercy seat. It was an empty space between the two angels, and he would sprinkle that blood that let the people's sins be carried forward for a year. And in that Holy of Holies, that ceremony took place once a year for all the sins. All right, so are you seeing a connection here yet between the Ark of the Covenant and the Holy of Holies and the tomb where Jesus was buried? When Mary looked in, what'd she see? So let's look again now, not only in the Old Testament and in the first part of the New Testament, but let's look at towards the end of the Bible, in the book of Hebrews, because Hebrews is kind of an explanation, an explanatory response to, so people would know what all this meant, what it should mean. So Hebrews 9, 11, and 12 says, "But Christ, when he came as high priest of all the good things to come, with the greater and more perfect tabernacle, not made with hands, that is, not of this creation, not with the blood of goats and calves and sheep, but with his own blood, he entered the most holy place once for all, not to be repeated year after year. But Christ, who was an acceptable sacrifice, became our high priest." And he became not only our high priest, he became our sacrifice as well. "With his own blood, he entered the most holy place once for all, having obtained eternal redemption." So Christ's blood became acceptable, not like a goat or a lamb or a bullock, but it was from a man who had not sinned, a holy man. God himself, in the form of Jesus, came to purchase our redemption. Sin had to be paid for. God paid for it with his own blood, the blood of his Son. How precious. So we see that Christ obtained the rightful heir. No longer was the meeting place from God hidden where people couldn't enter into. Now it was once and for all for our forgiveness. No longer a ritual, but from one who is worthy, using his own blood. And when he finishes, it says, if we look over in the next chapter, chapter 10, verse 12, it says, "But this man, Jesus, after he had offered one sacrifice for sins forever, sat down at the right hand of God." You see, the other priests, if you look back at this, there was no place to sit in the Holy of Holies. No place in there. Because the priests were not finished. They had to keep sharing, had to keep doing this year after year. But Jesus paid the price once and for all with his own blood and became our high priest. And he sat down at the right hand of God because the sacrifice was complete. It needed not to be offered again. So we're very, very thankful and very grateful. It gives us this. I go back to chapter 4 in Hebrews, one of the most beautiful statements I've ever read. And it said, let us therefore, because of all this that Jesus has done, let us therefore come boldly to the throne of grace, to that empty mercy seat between the two angels, the place where Jesus lay dead but returned to life. He said, let us come boldly to the throne of grace that we may obtain mercy, love, forgiveness, mercy, grace, and grace to help in time of need. Let me read that one more time. Let us therefore come boldly to the throne of grace that we may obtain mercy and find grace to help in time of need. We have been given access to the holiest of holies. We have been given access to the throne room of God where Jesus died and was raised from death to live forevermore and be our intercessor, be our high priest, be our obtained the mercy for all of us. We have that forever thanks to this. So I hope that was an aha moment for you, where you see two angels at the tomb. It says one at the head, one at the foot, but then it says two angels on the ark. One on the left, one on the right. A coincidence or a divine connection? I believe that God knew back in those days that there would be a holy connection. And he gave us the right to become his children, gave us the right to become forgiven. And forevermore, we are forgiven in the place of God that we can come to and obtain mercy. I love you guys. I hope this was an aha moment for you. It certainly was for me. And I pray that you'll join us again next Sunday as we look at another lesson from the First Baptist Church of Oxford, Alabama. God bless you, and welcome to the Solid Rock. Welcome back. I'll see you next week. I love you guys. Bye-bye.